I'm going to tell you about the worst Christmas Eve of my life and how it somehow turned into the best decision I ever made. Picture this. I'm sitting alone in a coffee shop watching couples walk by in the snow, waiting for a blind date who's about to reject me before we even finish our first cup of coffee. Fast forward 8 months, and that same woman is standing at my door, asking me to pretend to be her husband. I know it sounds crazy, but stay with me. Before we dive into this story, hit that subscribe button because you won't believe where this journey takes us. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the ending. This is a story about prejudice, second chances, and how life has a twisted sense of humor. So, let me take you back to December 23rd, about 2 years ago. I'm 30 years old, working as an architect in Seattle, and I've been single for almost a year. My best friend, Kevin, and his girlfriend wouldn't stop pestering me about getting back out there. You know how it is when you're the single friend. Everyone suddenly becomes a matchmaker. Kevin's girlfriend had this coworker she wanted me to meet. "She's perfect for you," she kept saying. "Smart, funny, loves architecture and design." I was hesitant. Blind dates always felt awkward to me, especially around the holidays. But I was lonely. And honestly, I was tired of spending Friday nights redesigning my apartment for the 100th time. So I agreed. Christmas Eve at 6 in the evening at this little coffee shop downtown called the Winter Bean. The place was decked out in lights, garland wrapped around every surface, and they were playing jazz versions of Christmas songs. It should have been romantic. It should have been perfect. I got there 15 minutes early because that's who I am. I'm the guy who shows up early, wearing a nice sweater, holding flowers like an idiot because my mom raised me to be a gentleman. I sat by the window watching the snowfall, rehearsing conversation starters in my head. My palms were sweating despite the cold. Then she walked in. Claire. She was wearing this red wool coat, blonde hair falling past her shoulders, and she had this confident stride that made everyone in the coffee shop look up. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. When she spotted me and smiled, I felt this little flutter of hope. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. The first 30 minutes were actually great. We talked about everything. She was a 7th grade English teacher, passionate about getting kids to love reading. I told her about my work, how I'd just finished designing a community library in a neighborhood that hadn't had one in 20 years. She seemed genuinely interested. Her eyes lit up when I talked about architecture that serves communities, not just corporations. We laughed about bad holiday movies. She told me about her student's chaotic Christmas pageant where one kid accidentally set a fake tree on fire. I shared a story about Kevin trying to cook a turkey and nearly burning down his kitchen. The conversation flowed. It felt natural. I remember thinking, maybe Kevin's girlfriend was right. Maybe this could be something. But then something changed. I mentioned my family's tradition of making my grandmother's sweet potato pie recipe every Christmas Eve, and there was this pause. Just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. Her smile faltered. She glanced down at her coffee, then checked her phone. I've been black my entire life. I know what that pause means. I've felt it in job interviews, at fancy restaurants, in elevators. It's the moment when someone suddenly sees your skin color instead of seeing you. It's subtle, but it's unmistakable. Her body language shifted. She stopped leaning forward. She crossed her arms. The questions became shorter, more polite than curious. I could feel her pulling away, and my heart sank because I knew where this was headed. After about 20 more minutes of increasingly awkward conversation, she put her coffee cup down and looked at me with this practiced expression. You know the one. The, "I'm about to let you down easy" face. "Listen," she said, "I really appreciate you meeting me tonight. You seem like a really nice guy, but I'm just not feeling a connection here. I don't think we're compatible." I nodded. What else could I do? I thanked her for her honesty, wished her a Merry Christmas, and watched her walk out of that coffee shop like she couldn't get away fast enough. She didn't even finish her coffee. I sat there for another 10 minutes, staring at those stupid flowers I'd bought, listening to "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" playing through the speakers. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wanted to be angry, but mostly I just felt tired. Tired of being reduced to a stereotype. tired of wondering if I'd ever be enough just as I am. The walk home was brutal. Couples everywhere, holding hands, carrying shopping bags, laughing. And there I was, alone, on Christmas Eve, rejected by someone who didn't even give me a real chance. I threw those flowers in a trash can 2 blocks from my apartment. I threw myself into work after that. When you're hurt, sometimes the only thing that makes sense is creating something meaningful. I'd been selected to design a youth center in the Central District, a historically Black neighborhood that had been overlooked for decades. This project became everything to me. I spent January and February sketching, revising, meeting with community leaders. I wanted this building to be more than just 4 walls and a roof. I wanted it to be a statement that these kids mattered, that their community deserved beautiful spaces too. Wide windows for natural light, bright colors, an art studio, a music room, a library with comfortable chairs where kids could escape into books. By March, construction had started. By April, local news had picked up the story. There was an article in the Seattle Times about young architects using design to address social inequality. They interviewed me, took photos of the construction site, talked about my vision for the project. I wasn't thinking about Claire at all anymore. She was just a bad memory from a bad night. I'd moved on, or at least I thought I had. It was a Tuesday evening in late April when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I was in sweatpants, eating leftover pizza, watching a documentary about Japanese architecture. I opened the door, and there she was. Claire, standing on my porch, looking nothing like the confident woman who'd walked into that coffee shop. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. She was wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, and she looked smaller somehow. Vulnerable. "Hi," she said quietly. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see." I just stared at her. My brain couldn't process why she was standing at my door 4 months after rejecting me. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face. Part of me was just confused. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Please, I know I don't deserve your time, but I really need to talk to you." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on my couch, hands clasped in her lap, looking down at the floor. I stood by the door, arms crossed, waiting for some kind of explanation. "I owe you an apology," she started. "Actually, I owe you more than that, but an apology is where I need to begin." I didn't say anything. I just waited. "That night, at the coffee shop, I rejected you because you're Black." She said it plainly, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. And I've hated myself for it every single day since. The honesty was startling. Most people dance around it, make excuses, pretend it's about something else. But she just said it. "I grew up in a small town in Idaho," she continued. "My father was a deeply prejudiced man. He taught me things that I didn't even realize were wrong until I moved away for college. I've been working on it, going to therapy, trying to unlearn all the toxic things I was raised to believe. But that night, when I sat across from you, all I could hear was my father's voice in my head. All his warnings, his hatred, his fear. And I ran. I'm so sorry." I sat down then, across from her, trying to process this. She saw an article about the youth center. She recognized my name, my face. She said it hit her like a truck, realizing she'd rejected someone kind and talented and passionate because of something as stupid as skin color. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "I know what I did was awful, but I needed you to know that it wasn't about you. It was about me and my own ignorance. You deserved better than that." I appreciated the apology. I did. But I still didn't understand why she was here, in my apartment 4 months later. Then she told me the rest. Her father was dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him weeks, maybe a month if he was lucky. "He's been doing a lot of reflecting," she said, "about his life, his choices, the things he taught me. He saw the article about you, about the youth center. He asked me about that night, about the blind date. I told him the truth. I told him I rejected you because of what he taught me. She wiped her eyes. He broke down. He said he'd filled my head with poison, that he'd ruined any chance I had at happiness because he taught me to see enemies instead of people. He wants to meet you. He wants to apologize before he dies. I shook my head. Claire, I appreciate you coming here, but I don't owe your father anything. Why would I help him feel better about being a racist? You're right, she said quickly. You don't owe him anything, but... She took a deep breath. He wants to see me settled, happy. It's his dying wish. And I told him that we'd reconnected, that we were together. I lied to him because I wanted him to have some peace. I stood up. This was getting ridiculous. So you want me to pretend to be your boyfriend for your dying racist father? Are you hearing yourself right now? I know how it sounds, she said, standing too. I know I have no right to ask you this, but I've seen what hate did to him, how it poisoned his whole life. If he could meet you, talk to you, maybe he could let go of some of that hate before he dies. Maybe it could mean something. Mean something to who? I asked. To him? What about me? What about the fact that I have to smile and shake hands with someone who would have taught his daughter to hate me? You're right, she whispered. I shouldn't have come here. This was selfish. I'm sorry. She moved toward the door, and I should have let her leave. I should have closed that chapter and moved on with my life. But something stopped me. I thought about my grandmother, the one who made that sweet potato pie every Christmas. She used to tell me that carrying hate around is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. She'd lived through Jim Crow, through real violence and discrimination, and somehow she'd come out of it believing in grace. I thought about the youth center I was building, about breaking cycles, about being bigger than the hurt someone caused you. One visit, I heard myself say. I'll meet your father, have one conversation. But Claire, after that, we're done. I'm not doing this for him. I'm not even doing it for you. I'm doing it because I don't want to be someone who lets hate win. The relief on her face was overwhelming. She thanked me over and over. We agreed to visit the following Saturday. She gave me her number, told me the address, and left. After she was gone, I sat in my apartment questioning every decision I'd ever made. What was I doing? Why was I agreeing to this? But somewhere deep down, I knew. I was tired of letting other people's prejudice define my actions. I wanted to choose grace, even when it was hard. That Saturday, I drove to a hospice facility in Bellevue. Claire met me in the parking lot looking nervous. She thanked me again, squeezed my hand, and led me inside. Her father was in a private room, propped up in bed, looking like a shadow of whatever he used to be. Cancer had stolen his strength, but his eyes were still sharp, still aware. Claire introduced us. Dad, this is Nathan. Nathan, this is my father, Bill. I shook his frail hand and sat down in the chair beside his bed. Claire sat on the other side, holding her father's other hand. Thank you for coming, Bill said, his voice weak. I know my daughter probably had to do a lot of convincing. She did, I said honestly. No point in pretending this was comfortable. Bill nodded. I read about your youth center. The article said you're building it in a neighborhood that's been ignored for decades. Said you want kids to have a place where they feel valued. That's right, I said. That's good work, he said. Important work. He paused, struggling for breath. I spent my whole life afraid of people who look like you. Taught my daughter the same fear. And for what? So I could die alone, full of regret, knowing I poisoned the best parts of her? I didn't know what to say to that. I was wrong, he continued, about everything, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I taught Claire. I'm sorry for men like me who made life harder for men like you. I'm sorry I almost made my daughter miss out on someone good because of my own ignorance. It was strange sitting there listening to this man apologize for a lifetime of hatred. Part of me wanted to stay angry. Part of me wanted to tell him that sorry wasn't enough. But looking at him, dying and desperate for redemption, I just felt sad. Sad that he'd wasted so much time on hate. I appreciate you saying that, I told him. I hope you find peace. We talked for another hour. He asked about the youth center, about my designs, about my family. Real questions, genuine interest. Claire watched us with tears streaming down her face. When I left that day, Bill shook my hand again and said, "Take care of my girl. She's lucky to have you." I didn't correct him. What was the point? Bill passed away 2 weeks later. Claire called me to tell me. I sent flowers to the funeral but didn't attend. My obligation was fulfilled. But then Claire called again. She wanted to meet for coffee, to thank me properly. I almost said no, but something made me agree. Maybe curiosity, maybe unfinished business. We met at a different coffee shop this time, and it was strange how different everything felt. She seemed lighter somehow, like a burden had been lifted. We talked about her father's final days, how he'd spent them calling old friends to apologize, how he'd died with less hate in his heart than he'd carried his whole life. "What you did meant something," she said. "Not just to him, but to me. You showed me what grace actually looks like." We started meeting regularly after that. Just coffee, just conversation. She wanted to understand the experiences she'd been sheltered from. I found myself opening up about things I rarely discussed. The microaggressions, the assumptions, the exhaustion of constantly proving your humanity. And somewhere in those conversations, something shifted. I started seeing her not as the woman who'd rejected me, but as someone genuinely trying to be better. Someone who'd done the hard work of examining her own prejudice and actively fighting against it. By summer, we were spending weekends together. By fall, it felt natural to call her when something good happened. By winter, I couldn't imagine my life without her in it. On Christmas Eve, exactly 2 years after that disastrous blind date, Claire showed up at my door again. But this time, she was holding flowers. The same kind I'd brought to our first date. "I have something to ask you," she said, and I watched her get down on one knee right there on my porch. "Nathan, you could have let hate win. You could have sent me away and I would have deserved it. But you chose grace. You chose to see potential in someone who didn't deserve a second chance. You've taught me more about love and forgiveness than I ever thought possible. I know our story started in the worst way, but I want to spend the rest of my life making up for that. Will you marry me?" I looked at her, kneeling in the snow, and I thought about how far we'd both come. How she'd done the uncomfortable work of confronting her own bias. How I'd learned that giving someone a second chance doesn't mean forgetting the first mistake. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'll marry you." So that's my story. The woman who rejected me on a blind date because of my skin color is now my wife. We got married last spring, and I'm not going to lie and say everything is perfect. She still has moments where she catches herself thinking something her father taught her. I still have moments where I wonder if I made the right choice. But here's what I've learned. People can change. Not everyone will, but some people genuinely do the work. Claire didn't just apologize. She went to therapy. She educated herself. She had uncomfortable conversations with her family. She showed up consistently and did the work. I'm not saying you should forgive everyone who hurts you. I'm not saying racism deserves patience and understanding. What I am saying is that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to unexpected blessings if we're willing to risk grace over bitterness. That youth center I was building? It opened last year. Claire volunteers there every Tuesday, running a creative writing program for the kids. She's building something beautiful out of something that started so ugly. If this story touched you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear about second chances. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my situation. Would you have helped her? Would you have given her another chance? And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories that prove life is stranger than fiction. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the people who hurt us the most can teach us the greatest lessons about forgiveness. Not because they deserve it, but because we deserve peace.